feel like I'm presenting a lot of contradicting statements. It hurts. It hurts. It hurts. It's really boring. People think that it's condescending. It makes me feel like I have bad taste. Oh, I hope that this doesn't tie into it in some dumb way, and then it did. It didn't launch 1,000 ships in my spirit. She's sexually attracted to planes. Before we get started, I just want to say a couple things. First of all, thank you for checking out this video. I am currently finishing editing it right now, and I don't want to waste too much time explaining what went wrong, but I had a bunch of technical issues. The audio is not that great in this video. I did my best. There was some sort of mix-up with the input on the screen recording versus my camera, and I did my best, and I'm sorry. Secondly, if you want to play a fun drinking game watching this, take a shot every time I say something did or did not change my life. I need to enhance my vocabulary, clearly. So, yeah, enjoy. Can you hear me? Is it on? Oh, it's on. Hi, welcome. I tried to make a reading vlog, but I was really struggling to figure out how to do it because it's hard to translate thoughts into a long form about a single book if you don't really have that much experience with it. So basically, I just had a different idea. Why not just do a tier ranking? Tier rankings are a good way to... Oh my god, that's so cynical. I'm really passionate about tier rankings. Today I'm going to be tier ranking all of the books that I have read since I got back into reading as an adult. We have 23 books here today that sort of run the gamut. I'm just going to talk a little bit about each book, what I liked, what I disliked, just to sort of give you a sense of my personal taste. So let's go ahead and start by going over the tiers in this tier ranking. So starting from the bottom, why don't we? At the bottom of this list is a category I've decided to entitle Eternal Sunshine. Yeah. Eternal Sunshine essentially means that I fantasize about a world where I could pay for a service to erase this book from my memory. It didn't do it for me. I didn't like it. This is the bottom of the barrel. This is territory of pretty much nothing about it worked for me, unfortunately. Tier 2 is called If I'd Known. Basically, what I meant by that is I don't think that they're a complete abomination, but if I'd known that it wasn't gonna fit with the sort of thing that I like, I probably just wouldn't have read it. Just a misalignment of taste. Okay? Next up we have Words on a Page, and I'm trying to be a little bit cheeky and funny. These are books that consist of words printed on a page, piece of paper, ink, letters formed together into a book that left not very much of an impression on me. This is sort of the middle ground tier. I just don't really have any sort of spark of passion when I think about this book in retrospect. Next up we have Positive Feelings. This is exactly, once again, exactly what it sounds like. This is a book for which I am not considering it in one of my favorite books of all time. I'm not running down the street screaming at people to go buy it, but I do have positive things more so than negative. The author was able to do something successful with this book. Next up we have All-Stars. These are books that are the All-Stars, but you know, unfortunately on any given All-Stars season, they're full of All-Stars, but only one of them can be the winner. These are the All-Stars that didn't necessarily make the cut, but I was still very pleased with what they delivered. They cut a little bit deeper than Positive Feelings, but they didn't really change my life necessarily. Maybe they did change my life, but they didn't really like make my heart grow 2 sizes in the process of reading them. And then finally we have Hall of Fame. This is a very exclusive place. These are the books that really reignited my love of reading. I don't know if any of you can relate to this, but I've seen this sentiment expressed a lot online, but I'm someone who loved reading as a kid, all through elementary school, all through middle school, even into like high school, but then that sophomore year hits, you're worried about your AP history class, you're worried about this and that, and you're depressed, and you're suffering, and you drop this thing that you love so much, and you're in that AP English class, and you're supposed to be reading books. You took it because you think of yourself as a reader, right? But it sort of crushes your spirit. And then you ignite your love for reading, every once in a while, you get one of these Hall of Fame books that are everything that you could hope for. All right, so let's go ahead and start. When I tell you that I just recorded for half an hour and lost all of it, that's what happened. I'm gonna give a brief summary, but I'm gonna try to avoid any and all spoilers. And we're gonna start off with The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. This book follows a man who's telling his life story. His name is Kavoth, I believe is how you say it. This is a fantasy story. This book I have positive feelings about. Didn't change my life. I thought that the main character was perhaps one of the best parts of this story because he's very competent. He's very smart and clever, but he also has quite a bit of an ego, which gets him in trouble from what I can remember. Some of the female characters let me down. I think the ending sort of let me down. My personal theory, you have this layer where he is telling his own life story. So he's sort of unreliable, right? He's probably going to be painting himself in a more positive light. I feel like the end of this book, the story that he told, might have been a falsehood. I don't really know because this is the first book in a series which remains unfinished. I haven't even read the second book because I don't want to be let down. This is very satisfying, gripping fantasy. I blew through this book, but it didn't really change my life. I feel like I'm presenting a lot of contradicting statements about this book. Ultimately, it makes sense, right? Some things positive, some are negative. You might love it, you might hate it, you might feel like I felt. But if you want a fantasy book that's gonna get you immersed, I would recommend it at the very least. The next one we're gonna do is The Book of Dust by Philip Pullman. I would say that The Golden Compass by Philip Pullman and The Subtle Knife, The Amber Spyglass, the series as a whole is called His Dark Materials. That's probably the top of my personal list of favorite series of all time. I haven't reread it in a while. Probably should do that soon. I might even do a video about that at some point. The Book of Dust. So excited to hear that this author was bringing back some of these characters that I knew, and ultimately this book should have been never written. Yeah. I wish I could erase this from my mind. This follows a boy there's a monastery across the river, I believe, where an infant version of a character from His Dark Materials is brought there to be kept safe or something like that. I think The Book of Dust is the name of the series. This book itself is actually called La Belle Sauvage, I believe. La Belle Sauvage is the name of a boat that they take down the river. Ultimately, I just found this really disappointing. I found the events of the second half of the book to be very episodic, childish. The main male character and the female character had a weird, husband and wife dynamic. Neither of them were fleshed out as characters in a way that felt satisfying. Oh my god, I'm being so negative. I'm sorry. I think a lot of these books that are in the lower tiers are things that I had high expectations for, and so that's why they are low. Not necessarily because they're the worst book ever written, but just because they were nothing like what I wanted them to be for me. This is probably one of the most disappointing books I've read in the past few years, maybe ever. Next up, Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. This book is an all-star book, easily. A great example of a book that tackles really abstract and deep themes in a way that is just so utterly successfully done throughout. Obviously, Frankenstein brings the creature, the monster, whatever you want to call him, to life. So there's themes about life and death. Dr. Frankenstein himself grew up being fascinated with alchemy, and then he becomes a scientist, and there's this really interesting exploration of curiosity and the fact that science itself seeks to answer those questions. And I just remember being so taken by that observation that the thing that draws people to science is the mystique of the unknown. You then have to dispel that. To be successful in science is to eliminate that childlike whimsy and wonder that you have. And I feel like that can be applied not just to science. That has implications that go so much further. It's just really good. The reason it's not Hall of Fame, I'm giving all this effusive praise, and I'm like, but not Hall of Fame. The book is a little bit plodding, it's a little bit slow. The middle section is like with any classic. I don't know if I've ever read a classic where I felt like I was completely on a roller coaster the whole time. It's a little bit boring, but worth it. Very worth it. That is a book that I probably will reread at some point in my life. I keep burping. Does this happen to YouTubers? If you talk too much, you start to burp? Okay, next up, Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. I feel really bad about this. This was a recommendation from a Clockwork Reader, a booktuber who I have been taking book recommendations from for almost 10 years. And when she said that this was one of her favorite books, either of last year or the year before, I was like, check, that's something I'm going to read at some point, and I was expecting to absolutely love it. This book follows a girl who is living, I believe, in Southern California in our modern time, but it was written, I believe, in the 90s. It's a sci-fi dystopian look at America. Part of the reason why this book has had such a big resurgence is because of the accuracy of some of Octavia Butler's predictions about the direction that America was going to go are just so spot on. I believe there's actually a part in the second book where the presidential candidate says the words, "Make America Great Again," which is insane. Gifted writers can see into the future, right? So this book follows her in a world that has a massive climate crisis, labor crisis. It is late end stage capitalism in this book. And it is a dangerous world, and she is just trying to survive. And she actually starts this book in a pretty privileged position, but even there, it is rough. Unfortunately, this book let me down. These words on a page. One thing I forgot to mention that's also part of the brief synopsis that I'll give of this book is that the main character has developed a sort of religion called Earthseed, centered around the concept of the universe being made of change, basically harnessing the power of change to try to manifest things that you want from your life. It's sort of like the Tao Te Ching meets like The Secret, I guess. Ultimately, I don't really even know what it was about it. I think this book, the stakes were so high, but I never really felt super pulled towards this book. A lot of the characters felt sort of flat. None of them really stick out in my memory, other than Lauren, the main character, who even her I didn't feel had a particular special spark to her as a character. I thought it ended sort of abruptly. I think this book might just be a case of me being a little bit negative because I thought it was going to do a lot more for me than it actually did. I feel really bad putting it in this position. It makes me feel like I have bad taste. I would consider reading the second book, but I haven't. I would consider rereading this book if someone told me that I was really missing something and I should give it another chance. But for now, I'm thinking it was sort of just words on a page, unfortunately. Next up, what do we have here? The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. And you know what? I'm going to do My Year of Rest and Relaxation at the same time because I have sort of similar things to say about both of them. These are both going in positive feelings, but like at the end, because they're sort of tentatively positive. Please don't attack me for putting both of these books above Parable of the Sower. Please. I thought that both of these books had a really interesting way of sketching a character portrait of someone who has this malaise, depression, disassociation from life, this sense of being totally disillusioned, but without necessarily there being some massive salacious drama that's causing them to feel this way. And that's why I have positive feelings. I think that might just be something in my taste that I feel drawn to. Characters who are struggling with something that they can't quite put a finger on. The author doesn't try to shove it in your face. And also with The Bell Jar, I thought that the ending was a lot more hopeful than I thought. I thought that for some reason this book ended in a different way than it actually does. Again, in the interest of not doing spoilers, I'm not going to talk too much about it, but both of these books are just about girls who are in their early adulthood, basically just don't care. In My Year of Rest and Relaxation, the main character is just taking sleeping pills all day, every day, just try to sleep for a year, hoping that she will emerge from this hibernation as a new person. And then in the bell jar, it starts off with the main character, Esther, after winning I think an essay competition and a stay at a New York hotel with a bunch of other girls. They get like interviewed for magazines, I believe, and stuff like that. Yeah, I don't want to say too much about the bell jar. It's hard to like really dive into it without telling you things that happen on page like 150, which I don't really want to do. But with My Year of Rest and Relaxation, I think the reason why it's only at the bottom end of positive feelings is because it was quite boring. Nothing really happened. And I thought the ending was so dumb. There was one of the characters mentioned that they got a job somewhere. And I was like, oh, I hope that this doesn't tie into it in some dumb way. And then it did. And with the bell jar, I have slightly more positive feelings, but I feel like this book has some like weird bigoted comments that come out of totally nowhere. I don't know, sometimes it's hard to put words to why something isn't an all-stars book. What do we have next? I think we have, oh, yes, indeed. We have Outline by Rachel Cusk. This book for me is an all-stars book. This book is something that a lot of people would think is really pretentious, boring. They would say, you found Parable of the Sower to be a little bit boring, and you thought that this book was interesting. Listen, I'm not saying I have good taste. I'm just saying that I'm being honest about the things that I like. So Outline is about this woman who is going to Greece to teach a writing workshop over the summer, but it's really one of those no plot, just vibes books. I believe it's 10 chapters long, and each chapter is a conversation that she's having with either one person or like a small group of people. I think one or two of the chapters are a conversation within the writing workshop, and there's friends and strangers that she's having a conversation with. I don't know if this was the intention of the title Outline, but the thing that makes this book stick out in my memory so much is the way that it tells you about the main character. There's not a ton of expository information given about her, but we see the way that she interprets other people's actions, the way that she reads people in conversation, the things that she observes about people, and that reflects on building a portrait of her as a character. Oh my god, I can't stop burping. Why am I burping? I've had to re-record this like 9 times. Yeah, this book just really stuck with me, and this definitely falls into that category of books that I will probably reread at some point in my life. Every page has some interesting observation, some interesting turn of phrase, realistic interactions about like the little idiosyncrasies that people have. I don't know if I would recommend it to everyone. If you don't like books that have nothing happening in them, avoid it. But if you love character-focused, lit fic, sort of like hazy, like oppressive heat, voices yelling into the void, I don't even know what I'm saying, but it could be an all-timer for me. It could be Hall of Fame, but I definitely need to reread it. But sometimes you finish a book, that's going right back to the TBR. I want to understand it on a deeper level, and that book deserves that treatment. What do we have next on this list? The Last Tale of the Flower Bride, yet another A Clockwork Reader recommendation. I am once again going against my better judgment. This, for me, if I'd known, I just wouldn't have picked it up. I'm sorry to say it. This book follows a man who meets a woman who has a sort of a dark, mysterious past. They have a love affair, they get married, and then they have to go back to her childhood home to deal with some events that have transpired there. But there's an inherent conflict in the fact that this woman is very secretive and guarded about her past. She doesn't want her husband asking any questions. She doesn't want her husband, like, exploring the house, talking to any of the housekeepers or anything like that. It's very dark, gothic, vaguely magical realism, and I thought the first 100 pages of this book were really, really good. The writing I thought was very strong with the richness of the detail. Every word felt like plush, velvet, rich, expensive, high quality wine, gold, jewelry, old money. I could just keep listing things that the writing evoked for me, but I was pretty let down and bored. I got bored. Sorry to all the people who love this book. I found that the second half of the book relied a lot on alluding to this big climactic event that was going to happen, and there was not enough momentum to make me want to get there, not enough intrigue to keep me hooked. And so the repetition of allusion to future events got really stale for me. And that would have been totally fine if the last act of the book took it off the deep end. I'm fine with stewing in something that's a little bit boring or foreshadowing that doesn't immediately resolve, as long as the payoff is good, right? I guess I would be open to the possibility that maybe I missed something, or maybe I'm just not the audience for this book. Unfortunately, if I had known, if I had a time machine and could go back and tell myself that this wasn't going to be my favorite book, I probably just wouldn't have read it. But if you like it, I respect that. I think I still gave it 3 stars. It's not a bad book, but it didn't do it for me. It just didn't. I'm sorry. Next up, I don't want to do that right now. Okay, let's do Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Last year, I was doing my performative male thing. I was doing female protagonists. I was embodying the Reese Witherspoon ethos.
Women's stories matter. Yeah. Right. They just matter.
Which they do. Pride and Prejudice. Ooh, where do I want to put this? Definitely on the positive side of things. It's gonna be positive feelings for me. By the way, these are not ranked. Don't assume that these are ranked unless I expressly say so. Pride and Prejudice, positive feelings. Yet another classic where I'm glad I read it, but the process of reading it did not change my life. I'm sure plenty of people have seen that review. 1 star, just a bunch of people going to each other's houses. And I thought that it was exaggerated, some sort of hyperbole for comedic effect, which it is. But when I actually read the book, I found it hilarious how true that description was. It really is. You're at the Bennets. You're at Wickham's house. Wait, Wickham? Who's who? Bingley. Bingley is... This is about Elizabeth Bennet. Darcy. So Bingley... It's about a bunch of freaking middle to upper class English people. The politics of marriage, yearning, dealing with someone who's unpleasant, having a crush on someone who you don't respect, going to their house, them coming to your house, the lightheartedness of it, but also the deeper layer of gendered expectation, of the way that Jane Austen skewers that while also acknowledging how much it affects people's lives. So for me, it would be just a bunch of people going to each other's houses, but 4 stars. Next up we have And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. And If I'd Known or Words on a Page. Probably, I'm gonna say this is Words on a Page. I figured out the mystery, which is unfortunate. Not trying to brag, not trying to be like a total D-bag. Didn't help that I figured out the mystery. Didn't help that I am very critical, very, very, very critical about mystery novels. It's so hard to do a good mystery. It requires 2 seemingly completely contradictory things for me. To give the reader enough information so that they could hypothetically solve the mystery. Because if you don't, then when the mystery is revealed, then it has sort of a deus ex machina potential where it can feel contrived. But on the other hand, there needs to be that barrier where there isn't so much evidence, it doesn't become too obvious. There needs to be that layer where if you do figure it out, that you feel really vindicated and satisfied. And I think that this book, for me, was sufficient. I think maybe mysteries just aren't my thing, or I just have not found the right mystery for me. I don't really remember any of the characters except for maybe 1 or 2. And yeah, for me, this is Words on a Page. I would say If I'd Known, but it's short enough where I don't feel like I regret reading it by any means. I wouldn't go back in time and not read it. And this is considered like one of the pinnacle classics of the mystery genre. Don't attack me, okay? Next up, Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. This for me is definitely positive feelings. And this is a book that I definitely need to reread at some point, because I think when I read this book, I took the plot a little bit too literally. How am I going to explain this? I will reread this book at some point in my life, and I will try to read it as a more abstract exploration of the psychology of the character, the ways that the book as a whole could be seen as an allegory or sort of an impressionistic portrayal of this character and the things that he goes through. I definitely took it a little bit too literally, and I think that that hindered my reading experience. This book follows a guy who lives in this giant labyrinth, basically, that has this ocean where the tides rise and fall. And there's one other man that he sees, and I'm not going to say anything else. I would definitely recommend this book. This book is something that a lot of people absolutely adore. I am not there yet, but I'm willing to get there at some point. I will reread this book, and I will have an appreciation for it that I currently do not have. Fingers crossed. Next up, what's next? Ooh, we have Going Clear by Lawrence Wright. This is a book about Scientology. This is nonfiction. I don't normally read nonfiction. I was just like getting fed videos of Leah Remini talking about her and her leaving Scientology.
Oh, it's effed up.
I wanted to learn more about it, and I did. Tells you about L. Ron Hubbard, tells you about the founding of the church, tells you about horrific things that happen within the Church of Scientology. There are ranks that you ascend as you go through Scientology, which are largely based on devoting basically every waking moment to advancing the church, as well as paying a ton of money for classes and materials and this process called auditing. This is a book that I would recommend if you want to learn about Scientology, but if you don't care, it's not a must read. It feels very strange rating a nonfiction book, but I'm going to give this, for me, this is just words on a page. This is words on a page in the most truest sense of that category. Didn't really change my life or change the way I viewed Scientology, but taught me a lot about it. All right, what do we have next? Next up we have Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. What are we gonna say about her? I'm gonna put this in, I don't know. If Pride and Prejudice is positive feelings, Rebecca is positive feelings. Not that these books necessarily have anything in common, but I'm just trying to like compare to help myself make these rankings. Rebecca is about a young woman who meets an older man who has had a recent tragedy befall him. They're quickly swept up into a love affair, and then he takes her back to his estate. This place is called Manderley. It is not literally haunted. It is arguably literally haunted by the ghost of his wife who has passed away, and that's all I'm going to say about it. The reason why I put this book in positive feelings, it was very atmospheric in a really compelling way. When I look back, I really like the way that it ended. The image that the book leaves you on at the end is sort of carrying all of my positive feelings about this book. I just thought it was a really evocative ending to this story. None of the characters changed my life. The setting was interesting enough, but I don't think it fully paid off for me. And so that's why it's just in positive feelings instead of being a all-star book. I liked it. I would recommend it if you want sort of gothic. I think this was written in the 1920s or 30s maybe. It's not really like Wuthering Heights Gothic. It's a little bit more accessible as a classic. That's actually what I'll say. I'll say if you want a classic that's a little bit more accessible and you like the English coastline, everybody's sort of whispering in the halls of the manor, everybody has a secret, go ahead and pick this up. All right, next up, we have The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. For me, this is positive feelings. This book follows a disgraced journalist and a punk hacker girl as they investigate a murder that occurred a very long time ago on this Swedish island town. It's the dead of winter, it's cold, it's very clinical, it's very graphic. There's a lot of violence against women. It can be really difficult to read and envision some of the really disturbing things that happen in this book. You probably know this book. This book was made into multiple movies. I like this book. I read both of the other books in this series too. A lot of the strength of this series derives from Michael and Lisbeth, who is the hacker, Michael, the two of them as characters and the ways that they are just extremely different people. Those portraits of them as characters get honed and developed more and more and more as the series goes on. The reason why I like the other books more is because his development of those characters happens very effectively, in my opinion. This first book, I definitely have positive feelings about it, so positive feelings is the right place for it to be. All right, next up we have 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I'm gonna say oh God. It hurts. It hurts. It hurts. This is words on a page. If there was another tier in between words on a page and positive feelings, this would definitely be in it, but there is unfortunately not. So this book is follows many generations of this family who live in a town that was founded by one of their ancestors, and it follows them and their many foibles through many generations. Everyone in this family is a little bit wacky, a little bit kooky. It's hard to describe. This book is chock full of insane events, crazy, interesting people, interesting. The magical realism is interesting. I can't. Hey, can anyone tell me an adjective other than interesting? I feel more neutral about it than I do positive. I think this book probably would benefit from reading it with someone or having some sort of discussion group. What I can tell you is that it took me like 3 months to read this book. Check it out if you like crazy family dynamics and magical realism, but I wouldn't say that this is an all-time favorite for me. All right, next up we have Martyr by Kaveh Akbar. This is another book that I will reread at some point in my life. This is positive. I feel positively about this book. This book follows a young adult, not young adult, he's a fully grown man. I think he's a recent college graduate who is also heavily depressed. He's an addict. He is an Iranian man who grew up in the United States with a single father because his mother was shot down in a passenger plane by the US military, and that follows him through his life. I thought this book was so richly layered in concept and potential, and it didn't fully deliver for me because I didn't really understand this main character on a deep level. I definitely didn't really understand any of the peripheral characters. There was a lot of really interesting exploration of the concept of martyrdom, wanting to make something of your life, to be willing to throw your life away in pursuit of a greater cause. I think the ending of this book let me down at the time that I read it. I was just sort of confused about what was happening. I will say this book has definitely aged better in my memory. I feel more positively about it now than I did when I read it. And I think that this is once again similar to Piranesi. This is a book that I need to reread at some point and try to engage with more thematically. An interesting development that I'm noticing as I'm going through this tier list, because I like to think of myself as somebody who loves complex, abstract things, but then I also am not bowled over by some of these books that require that sort of thinking to fully appreciate them. It could definitely move up for me if I reread at some point, but on the first read, I read this about a year ago, didn't change my life, but I would say thumbs up. Okay, finally, we're gonna get to this book, My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. This is a Hall of Fame book for me right away. This book is so incredibly meaningful. This book deals in very heavy subject matter. This book deals in a story of a girl who is groomed by her high school English teacher. This book hits really hard, even though I haven't experienced anything on the level of what the main character goes through in this book. I can definitely relate to some of the struggles of feeling manipulated and then that following you into your adulthood. No matter how much you feel like you don't deserve to continue to be torn up about something, and the way that that intersects with this innocence and naivete that was taken advantage of. I don't know. This is a book, it's not even necessarily cathartic. It's not inspiring, really. It's inspiring in the sense of persistence and perseverance and survival. This is a character who has been through a lot and who is telling you their story. I think about this book all the time. All right, next up we have Babel by R.F. Kuang. Take a shot every time I mention The Clockwork Reader. I didn't even realize how many books I've taken as a recommendation from her channel, but this is a book that is extremely divisive. I have seen so many people talk about this book, and I have Rarely, I can't actually remember seeing any review of this book that wasn't extremely polarized. I have seen extremely positive reactions and extremely negative reactions with very little middle ground. This is a dark academia that deals in the slimy underbelly of academia as an institution. This story is about a boy named Robin who is adopted by a professor at Oxford University in the 1800s, I believe, for the purpose of being raised to become a translator. I don't want to give away too much. In this world, there is a magic system where magic is sort of captured through the meaning of words that is lost in translation. You can use that layer of meaning and manifest it. I'm not going to try to explain it too much. I thought that this book was going to be heavy on this magic stuff and this magic system. It's really not that heavy. It exists more as a literary tool to communicate the themes about colonialism and the way that silver, the material that is used to conduct this translation process, physical extraction of silver, and also the cultural extraction of language, how it fuels the empire to continue to perpetuate itself. And in terms of the intersection of that with dark academia, I think that's what impresses me so much about this book in retrospect. The commentary of the dark academia aspects is not just confined to the university. You see the trail of how this young boy who's dying alone in a poor village, how this chain connects to the power center, the epicenter of the colonial project. For a lot of people who really hate the book, they find it very didactic. People think that it's condescending. The book is filled with these little footnotes that sort of like explain or like double down on a piece of commentary, the main thing that detracts from a lot of people's reading experience. But for me, I didn't think that it was enough to make me not absolutely think that this book was incredible. None of the condescending tone, none of the righteous anger that is conveyed through the very blatant political commentary in this book, none of that was enough to make me feel like the author was annoying me. Definitely a book that I still think about all the time. Also, another thing for me, in art in general, whether it's painting or writing or movies or music, I have a lot of respect for when I can tell someone put so much time and effort and love into making something, even if there are flaws, or in this particular case, yes, maybe the author is a little bit too direct about the moral tone, but I can very easily put all those things to the side. This was 5 stars for me. This is the Hall of Fame. This is a Hall of Fame book. Next up, we have Beloved by Toni Morrison. This book is definitely all stars. I wouldn't say Hall of Fame because this is yet another book that I will have to reread to fully appreciate, without a doubt. Definitely missed a lot of things on the first time. This book is told in an extremely difficult way to read sometimes. I mean, for a book that was written, when was this written? Beloved was published in 1987, but it is, for me personally, as hard to follow sometimes as a classic from like the mid 1800s. This book is the story of a woman who escaped from slavery, and when presented with slave catchers finding her, I believe in Ohio, she murdered one of her daughters so as to prevent that daughter from having to grow up and live a life of slavery, which is a bone-chilling premise. And then essentially this story becomes a ghost story of the way that that child follows this family moving forward. I feel like I don't want to say too much about this book other than it's just one of the most powerful books that I've ever read. I think that's probably the right word for it. I definitely didn't appreciate it as much as I could have. It's something that you need to sit with and feel every chapter as much as you would sit with and feel an entire book. This book requires a lot from you as a reader, not only emotionally, but also in terms of paying attention. You need to be willing to put a lot of effort into trying to figure out what's going on, because the way that this book moves through time can be so confusing. Just in the middle of a page or in the middle of a sentence, something that's being told in someone's inner monologue turns into something that they were saying aloud at some point in the past, or a story from the past is interwoven with something that's currently happening in the present. This isn't something that actually happens in the story, but like Setha, the main character, could be like making dinner, and she's thinking about making dinner in the past while she's also making dinner in the present, and she's having a conversation with someone in the past and in the present, but it's two different people, and she says something in the past, but then it's answered as if it's the person she's having a conversation with in the present. Completely made up example, but that's just sort of the idea of how this book plays with time and how you need to really be on your toes to read it. It will be a Hall of Fame book once I continually become reacquainted with my love of reading and continue to improve my reading comprehension. And I don't even say that just as like a joke or to try to like be self-effacing in a way that is like relatable or whatever. I actually do sort of struggle with self-consciousness about the fact that to engage with a book as deep as this requires you to be very deep as a reader as well. And I'm willing to say that I don't know if I'm necessarily there yet. Yeah, Beloved by Toni Morrison, amazing book. All right, next up we have something that could not possibly be any more different. This is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. I mean, we all know this book. We know this story. This is a kid's book. I just picked this up in one afternoon and just read it. I don't know why. I think it was because I had it. This is why. I have an edition. I have a box set of these books. They're at my dad's house. I don't have them anymore, but I just never read them, you know? I guess the main drawback of why this is not in a higher category can be exemplified by the fact that I still have not read any of the other 6 books in this series. This book it's a Christian allegory. It has lots of fantastical elements. It has betrayal. It has redemption. It has family. It has talking animals. It has witch queen. I mean, you all know this book. Everyone knows this story. Not much to say about it. Didn't change my life. I probably still will try to read all these books eventually at some point in my life, but for now, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is words on a page. Another book that is going to get me utterly ripped to shreds, hated, rebuked, despised, disrespected, and completely and utterly discounted for my opinion on it. The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. This is strictly words on a page. This is a bunch of people walking through the woods and up a mountain and down. This book is really boring. I will read it at some point in my life. I will read the full series and I will have an appreciation of it that I don't currently have. That is something I'm aware of. I know that it will age like fine wine. There's a reason why this is a classic. There's a reason why this is so loved. There's a reason why this is maybe like the ultimate fantasy classic. I just don't know what that reason is after reading the first book. It's really boring. A lot of hiking, a lot of descriptions of trails, a lot of descriptions of trees. I was about to start giving a plot summary. I'm not going to give a plot summary. If you don't know what happens in the Fellowship of the Ring, just go read it, watch a movie. They're trying to get the ring to destroy it. We're closing in on the end of this list. I'm tired. Daisy Jones and the Six. Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I have not read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo or any of her other books, but I thought this was great. This is all stars for me. And I'll tell you why. This book is about Well, Daisy Jones. The Six is a band. Billy is the leader of the band. Pretty much everyone in the Six is a notable character, but the two main characters are Daisy Jones and Billy. And then I would say Camilla, I believe is her name, is like the other main character. The reason why this is so high for me, I love the band vibes. Can you tell that I'm pretty tired? The way that they fight. If you know anything about the making of the album Rumors by Fleetwood Mac, this is definitely heavily inspired by that, in the sense that at the time of making this incredibly classic, influential, like top 10 of all time album that everyone loves, were hating each other, fighting all the time. Lots of conflict, emotional conflict, because they were in love and they were breaking up and they were working through their complicated romantic feelings. And this was also in the 70s. Everyone was like on coke, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and it's just crazy, crazy business. But then, and this book is sort of a retelling of that time period, not just about Fleetwood Mac, but against that backdrop of the 70s Southern California music scene, there is a group of mostly that trio of characters that I described, who are handled so gracefully and delicately by the author, masterfully sketched as portraits of real people who are, like most people, so lovably complicated but also flawed, who love each other and fight. All of the fights feel like they could be real. All of the love feels very real. And it's told in a really interesting way. It's told as if it's like an oral history. So every single thing in the book is like a quote from one of the characters telling a story about the past, which adds that sort of unreliable narration aspect. Personally, I don't think that the whole two different versions of the past thing is the biggest draw of the book. It's done really well, but I just thought I'd mention that the format of the book as an oral history is another interesting aspect. And so all of these positive things that I'm saying come together to form an all-star book. For me, not Hall of Fame, because I'm just not feeling it. I don't know. It didn't ricochet inside my body and break all my bones. It didn't launch 1,000 ships in my spirit, but that's fine. It's still really good. And then finally we have Sky Daddy by Kate Folk. And this is yet another booktuber book. Well, it's not a booktuber book, but it is a book that I learned about from a booktuber, Frankie's Shelf. Love Frankie's Shelf. And this book is about a freaky deaky woman. Honey, it is so simple to describe what this book is about. She wants to die in a plane crash, and she is sexually aroused by the prospect of that happening to her. It doesn't matter what she does for work, because this book is about planes, mama. This is a book about how she wants to die in a plane crash and how much that turns her on. She's sexually attracted to planes, and she wants to die in a plane crash. How many times do I have to say it before you understand? I thought this book was good. I liked it quite a bit. I thought that it was 80% of what I wanted it to be. I didn't fully get this character, who is a super weird, interesting, traumatized woman who wants to die in a plane crash. I wasn't fully convinced by her. I wasn't fully convinced by any of the other characters in the periphery. I will say, I don't laugh out loud a lot. I could be watching a funny show that I know is funny and that I really like, and still watch like a whole episode of it without laughing out loud sometimes. But this book, Sky Daddy by Kate Folk, I laughed out loud several times. It was funny, it was entertaining. I read it so fast, probably maybe faster than any of the other books on this list, except for The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I definitely have positive feelings about it, but I don't think it's an all-star book. Sorry. I'm putting it in positive feelings for now. It didn't quite land. I didn't really fully understand what the author was going for. So here's the list. What do we think? I think, do I want to add another tier? I think I do. What do we want to call this one? We're going to call this Purgatory. We're going to be moving a couple books down into Purgatory, and we're going to be moving a couple books up into purgatory. The bell jar and my year of rest and relaxation are gonna go into purgatory for me upon reflection. And down here, 100 Years of Solitude, Parable of the Sower. See, but now it looks like everything in words on a page is negative because it's like below the halfway point. What are we doing? Here's what I'm gonna do. The bell jar is gonna go back into positive feelings because I have positive feelings about that book. And then for words on a page, the Fellowship of the Ring is gonna go up to purgatory because I have a feeling that I will reappraise that book. So yeah, here we are. Oh my God, we made it to the end. What do you think? Well, I'm extremely tired. I'm gonna end it here. This video is probably gonna be like 52 minutes long. So much for making it all the way to the end. If you made it here, special treat for you. I'll take off my wig. This is gonna take forever to edit. Okay, have a good day. Bye.